Hey guys, it's Logan here with Hydra572. Today we're going to be talking about the Kershaw Emerson collaboration knives. I've got a decent sampling of them here in front of you. I've already reviewed the CQC 2K. These other two will be reviewed in due time. And also, if you haven't yet, go ahead and check out our Using the Kershaw Emersons video. We put these things through their paces pretty dang good. I wanted to see how they would hold up as EDC utility cutter blades. Now, I'd like to do an overview of this whole product line in addition to my individual reviews. So let's go ahead and get started with the fact that it's just really cool that these knives exist. I know that a lot of guys are just like me. We've been lusting over Emersons for a long time, but every time we get into that $200 level looking to spend a lot of money on a knife, something else piques our interest. I don't know why, but a lot of us end up just lusting after Emersons, trying to buy one used for a little bit of a discount, stuff like that. So to see an actually truly Emerson designed knife, not just like a Spyderco Delica with the wave feature licensed, which is cool in its own respect, but to see a true full-on Emerson designed knife coming out at production knife costs, that is just really cool. That's something that a lot of people wanted, and props to Kershaw for being able to hop on that. Now, one of the things that you get with an Emerson design knife is obviously the wave feature. That's one of the big selling points of these knives, and for a long time, pretty much back since when I got the Cold Steel AK-47, I've been talking about how cool and how much more convenient it is to wave a knife out of your pocket. It's simply the fastest opening mechanism that I can think of, save for drawing a fixed blade out of its sheath. And it's pretty much just as fast as that. Especially if you're wearing a pair of pants where you can be sure that the thing's going to fire, this is just a balls-to-the-wall awesome opening mechanism. In addition, we have the thumb disc. We can flick those knives out of there. Something else that you get when Emerson designs a knife is just a simple, no BS, clean, classic lines looking knife. I think the 6K is the best representation of that. This just looks irrevocably American. It looks very simple, very clean. I just love the design lines of that knife. And it fits pretty dang good ergonomically in hand too. You guys know that I like those simpler coffin style grips. I think all of these knives have that to some degree, the 5 and the 6, and definitely the 6 winning that competition, I think. With Kershaw, we know that we tend to get really reliable performance and execution, and I think to a certain degree that is what we get here with these knives. Unfortunately, it's not all rose-colored glass when you're looking at these knives. There are some negatives that we have to talk about. It just feels like these knives were rushed out the door to me. There's a couple of reasons for that. On my 5K, near the tip, on the, I guess what would be the lock side, the coating was not applied evenly. That's the type of thing that you would typically expect for QC to catch, and it really didn't. I've heard similar problems from other people. In addition to that, we've already talked about it in a number of videos, but the hardware on these knives is just a straight up and down problem. I tend to be apprehensive about mentioning issues with stripping a screw because I don't want people to accuse me of having the problem, and there's no way that I can really prove to you guys. I don't record my good technique, so maybe it was just me using a screwdriver who was too small or anything like that, but every time that I tried to loosen or tighten a screw on one of these knives, the hardware was just so soft that I managed to move some of the metal out of the way, move a good portion of the way towards stripping it, and with a lot of the handle and clip screws, I actually did just flat out strip the screw. You guys can see here on my 5K, I had to go ahead and just Dremel in my own little flathead so that I could, move the clip over side to side. I wanted to test it out for left side carry. In addition to hardware problems, unfortunately on some of the frame lock models, it appears that they were sent out with clip screws that were long enough to get into the threaded portion of the steel on the frame lock, but weren't long enough to reach through the G10 into the threaded portion of the liner. And so people who wanted to carry those knives left-handed were just hung out to dry. That's really too bad to see from a company with as good a reputation as Kershaw, and the company that we've been expecting good performance and good execution from for a long time. That's kind of disappointing in all honesty. Otherwise, these knives are pretty cool. It's not too often that somebody in the knife community makes a huge contribution to how everyone else can produce knives, and they manage to actually retain it and keep getting credit for it. I mean, how often do you actually hear somebody still calling a liner lock the Walker liner lock, or calling a frame lock the Reeve integral lock? Much more prone to end up in situations like what happened over at Cold Steel with Andrew Dempko, where he designed the Triad Lock, and I'm certain that he was paid handsomely and that he gets lots of money from the sale of those knives, and Cold Steel haven't been jerks about it. They let him use that lock on his custom knives, but it just seems like that lock is the property of Cold Steel now. Not many people are calling it the Dempko Triad Lock. So even though I really love the wave and I'd like to see every knife have a wave opening feature, and I don't really hold it against companies like Cold Steel who want to put a thumb plate on a couple of their knives and let them have wave openings, it is still really cool to see Ernie Emerson getting credit for something that he did that was big for the knife community. Even though I feel like licensing it from Emerson might be part of the reason that these knives cost just a little bit too much. These knives are priced competitively, but I'm not sure they're poised to take over the market. And the cool thing about Kershaw has been their ability to release pretty good blades down at around the $20 price point. I mean, reference the Kershaw Clash. This knife is as cool as either of these and damn near as cool as the 6K, and it goes for about $10 less. I can't say for certain that licensing the wave feature is something that drove the cost of these knives up a lot, but I can be sure that these knives seem just a hair overpriced in my estimation. In addition to that, the 8CR13 MOV that they used on these blades is a very middle-of-the-road blend of this steel, and honestly, I can't really say that I like it. When you go with something like a Spyderco 8CR13 MOV, you get a steel that's very soft but very, very easy to sharpen. When you go with some other company's AUS 8, another budget steel, you get something that is a little bit more of a pain to sharpen, but it's much, much easier to hold that edge for a long period of time. These kinda end up right in the middle. They weren't very easy to sharpen, and they didn't hold their edge for a super, super long time, and that's really too bad. That, in addition to the price factor, makes it to where I'm not sure that these knives are going to completely take over the market and be huge, long-standing competitors to the Spyderco Tenacious or even the Ontario Rat 1, those long, well-known budget folders that we've been talking about for years on end. Basically, I just think of these knives as being pretty dang cool. Not being really revolutionary, they represent something cool for the knife market, but I don't think anybody needs to go out and own all of them unless you're a real completionist. I would say so far my 6K is my favorite, and the 5K is pretty close behind. We talked about in the 2K review, it's just a little bit too small for my hand. Ultimately, I would not be afraid to recommend any of these knives to any of my friends. They are just pretty cool all-around blades, but I wouldn't necessarily say that more than one of them is a really must-have in your collection the way that I would say a Rat 1 or a Tenacious is. That's just me, though. I'm certain that these knives will sell quite a bit of money. I'm seeing them in a lot of sporting goods stores that I'm at, and I'm sure that that is a huge deal for how much money you can make selling a knife. And with the classic lines that these knives have, I'm sure they'll sell plenty. They just look pretty dang good. Not sure if even the average person buying this knife will know what they represent to the knife community, or how cool it is for guys who have been lusting after Emersons for a long time to finally be able to pick up something designed by Emerson, but I think it's pretty dang cool. This is really about as large as these knives come. They make one that's a little bit larger than this, but mostly these stay pretty small, and I think that's out of deference to Emerson himself not wanting to compete with his product line, which is pretty significantly more expensive. I think they know if they made a whole bunch of full-on 4-inch versions of his knives available for $40, that would take a pretty big chunk out of the people who are willing to buy his knives. But even just as utility cutters, with the 6 really being large enough to think about using for emergency defensive, especially with that quick opening wave, I think this is a damn cool line of knives, and I'll be holding on to at least these two, and yeah, pretty happy to own these things, happy to be able to report on them. Hope you guys have enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more of the same.